Hello friends, welcome to this video. So in this video I will address a very important question that has been troubling me for the last few days, last few weeks. So see, at a point the first part of this video will be a bit personal, so you may skip it if you wish, or you may. So anyway, I was really interested in metaphysics for the last few months. So obviously, as some of you know, physics is my cup of tea. Physics is my main interest. I want to pursue physics. But I feel that this is just my personal feeling that if we don't know, or at least if we don't try to know about the fundamental nature of reality, about what's happening at the most fundamental state, about these things, then what's the point of our existence? We all come here, we all study, we all do a job, we all earn money, we all grow old, we all die. That's the rule. But we don't know why we're here in the first place, from where we came, what is consciousness, why are we conscious, how are we conscious, we don't know this. So I feel we don't even have the right to live if we are not at least trying to know these answers. Now maybe it's not possible to know these answers, maybe we can never know these answers, but at least we should try, because number one, this gives us satisfaction. At least to me it gives an immense satisfaction to think about the deep questions, about the big questions. And since we exist, and since we don't know why we exist, how we came to be here, so I think we should try to find the answers. Now the question is, this is what science does. Science tries to find the answers to these questions. But the question is, science has come far from this original goal. Today science wants to make our life convenient. Science wants to make living easy, improve medical sciences, find new devices, make more improvements. And not only that, science also wants to understand the fundamental nature of reality. In physics, we are trying to find the standard models of these particles. We're trying to find evidence for string theory. We're trying to find what are the fundamental nature of this universe, the fundamental laws according to which the universe functions. But still, it cannot be denied that in the past days, many years, when science was just started at the very beginning, at that time, science and philosophy were essentially the same things. But as the days have passed, science has moved towards a more practical stream than metaphysics, than philosophy. So in philosophy and metaphysics, we want to try to understand the big picture. Why are we here? What is the basic philosophy? What is the root of everything? We try to understand that in metaphysics. Now the thing is that in metaphysics, we start from scratch. We ask very, very fundamental questions. Questions, the answers of which are taken to be granted in science. So in science, we take something to be granted. We have a lot of presuppositions which we assume to be true, and we build theories based on that. So it's not entirely fundamental in that sense, because we have some assumptions, we have some presuppositions, and based on that we're making some theories. Because in science we take a lot of things for granted. In metaphysics, what we do, we try to ask very fundamental questions to understand the very fundamental nature of reality, not just this universe, the most fundamental state of existence. Now, but the thing is that I have done some research on this metaphysics, on the fundamental nature of reality, and I'm doing some research now as well. But I think that mostly metaphysics is, I will not say useless, but it's almost useless. Because see, metaphysics, whatever arguments you're trying to develop in metaphysics, there will always be some paradoxes, there will always be some loopholes, some logical contradictions, at least almost always. See, we cannot understand the universe, understand the fundamental nature of reality in its entirety, because we ourselves are a part of it. So I'm coming to that point after a few minutes, but the thing is that, see, I have done some deep thinking about these things. So maybe I will be publishing that, or I will be sharing those things with you, but not now, not in this video. But what I feel is that if you start from a very fundamental stage, maybe at the most fundamental stage, not the creation of the universe, not the Big Bang, even before that, at the most fundamental stage. At that stage, what could have happened? There are two possibilities. At least logically, there are two possibilities. Either nothing should have happened, because this is obvious. Why should something happen all of a sudden? Either nothing should have happened, or every possible phenomena should occur. Why? Because you see, if we assume that some particular phenomena, at that point of time, no law of science will be applicable. At that point of time, we cannot apply any law of science, because the laws of science which are true for this universe may not be applicable elsewhere. completely different laws of physics, maybe they're in some other universe or at an even more fundamental stage. So we cannot have any sort of presuppositions, any sort of laws of science we cannot apply at that stage. So either nothing should have happened, that's alright, but if we assume that nothing happened, then how come we are here? Something must exist, right? Even we can say that reality is just ideas in our minds, the reality does not exist, but something must be there. I am sitting here, so something must exist. I can think about these things. Even though the realities just exist in my mind, but my mind should exist even for that. So this is not a valid option that nothing occurred. So the only other alternative is that every possible phenomena occurred. Because if we assume that some particular phenomena occurred and the other phenomena did not occur, then we have to explain why this sort of preference, why these particular phenomena are occurring and these particular phenomena are not occurring. So we cannot explain that because at that fundamental stage we cannot take the help of any laws of science or anything, as I have already told you. Now when we mean every possible phenomena, so obviously every possible phenomena means in that case we are only every possible phenomena occurred and in one such phenomena, in the evolution of one such phenomena in one such system, due to some lucky accidents we just came to be here. Life exists, life emerged, and today we are here, humans. Then that's the possibility. Now even then this also leaves many questions unanswered. There are many paradoxes, there are many logical paradoxes. For instance, if I say that either nothing should have occurred or everything should have occurred, now the question is why not? So we have two possibilities, either nothing should have occurred or everything should have occurred. Now according to us everything occurred, because if nothing would have happened at that stage, then we wouldn't be here. No, but even then there is a preference. The fundamental system is preferring the everything should occur option more than the nothing should occur option. So even then there is a preference. Now you may say that nothing, in one system nothing occurs and in one system everything occurs. But in that case there should be two systems existing at the same level. But we are saying the most fundamental stage means there should be only one way to achieve the system. So no system can exist parallel to that system at that level. That is the very definition of the most fundamental stage. Okay. So these are the few logical contradictions. So that's why I have come to the conclusion that metaphysics is maybe not completely useless, but focusing on science, focusing on physics or just science. It can be chemistry also, biology also, or just mathematics. Because mathematics also we have some solid grounds upon which to proceed. That will make life easier for us, and that will definitely make life easier for us. But when it comes to the question of whether that will let us know the big picture, know the fundamental nature of reality, that may. I cannot say that will, because maybe that won't. Because see, we have narrowed down our science. We have built our theories on presuppositions, on many thousands of presuppositions. So maybe we have come far from the actual fundamental nature of reality, and maybe we have no way of going back. We cannot just destroy science and start from scratch. That's out of question. But yeah, it will definitely make life better for us, so that we should focus on science. And metaphysics can give us pleasure, can give us satisfaction, but I doubt if metaphysics will be of any practical importance, will be of any real significance. I was very interested in metaphysics, but I am losing my interest now because there are logical contradictions, and it's, even in metaphysics it's impossible to proceed without some presuppositions. Some presuppositions will be always there. So when I was young, I used to think that my aim in life was to understand the fundamental nature of reality, understand what happened at the most fundamental stage, how come everything, like these big questions. But I'm slowly starting to realize that it's just plain impossible to do so. Now the next I should come to the point of consciousness, the problem of consciousness. So in Mind and Matter, I have made a video about Mind and Matter. That's an essay written by the great physicist Erwin Schrödinger. So in Mind and Matter, Schrödinger emphasizes the fact that we have created a worldview, we have created our science, but we have completely excluded consciousness from this worldview. Now the point is that, see, there is a very famous saying: if consciousness was simple enough to be understood, we wouldn't be smart enough to understand it. Because see, consciousness, we ourselves are conscious. We are using our consciousness to understand the world, to build our viewpoint of the world, to build our worldview. So whatever we are doing, it's biased by our consciousness. Like we are ourselves conscious. So we cannot study consciousness from a third person perspective. Like we're studying the world from a third person perspective. But we cannot study consciousness from a third person perspective. Right? In the same way. We cannot do that. Because we ourselves are conscious. Everything we are doing, everything we are studying, everything we are thinking, we are doing it we are from the perspective of our consciousness. So it's very likely that we will never know how consciousness emerged and what exactly is consciousness, what is the secret of consciousness. Maybe we will never know. That's very likely. Now the thing is that it's very likely, but some people say that there is nothing mysterious about consciousness. Like we already know everything, we already know about how the neurons fire, how the synapses fire and all these things, how these patterns are forming and breaking and the brain is functioning. So we know the biology, we know the physics, like how it's all happening. I mean, we don't know it exactly, but we have a basic idea. So they say that consciousness seems mysterious, consciousness seems out of reach only because it's very complicated, it's very complex, like it's very sophisticated. But that does not mean we don't know it. For instance, in physics, in classical physics, we thought that, so in classical physics the assumption was that it was possible to know the position and momentum of a particle with 100% certainty. Now it is practically impossible to know the position and momentum of all the particles in the universe, but it's theoretically possible. And if it's theoretically possible, that means we can predict the past, future and everything. That was the idea of determinism. But then quantum physics came and then we understood that it was not possible to know both the position and momentum with 100% certainty even for a single particle. But initially the thing was that even if it was not practically possible, but initially it was believed that it was at least theoretically possible. So some people think that consciousness is theoretically possible to understand consciousness. It's practically not possible because of the complication, because of the complexity, because of the extreme high level of sophistication. But that's the thing. So in this video I want to suggest a book to you if you are also bewildered by consciousness. So see, this consciousness is the most pressing problem of our science. Like it has mostly remained beyond the reach of our science. And so many physicists, for instance, I took an interview of Edward Witten. He is a renowned physicist and he has a lot of contributions. So I asked him about this consciousness. Okay, like what do you think about consciousness? Will physics be able to explain consciousness better in the future? So he said that as far as I can remember, he said that the further developments in computer science will somehow make the situation less mysterious, will make us understand consciousness better. But I personally think that, so obviously I'm not, this is my just my personal viewpoint. I personally think that it's not that simple. Because see, consciousness is, we cannot study consciousness from a third person perspective. And consciousness is not just simply just a strange combination, an accidental combination, an emergence. Obviously it's sort of emergent, but it cannot just be simply that. There must be something more to it, and that something more is very likely will be forever beyond our reach. So so some people asked me, so see, I have done a bit of research. So this is my book. I published this book, Our Physics So Far, A Journey Through Space-Time Consciousness and the Fundamental Nature of Reality. So in this book, you see, I discussed physics, consciousness and metaphysics, three things. So I discussed just some views about consciousness. Okay, like consciousness, can chaos theory explain consciousness? How can physics explain consciousness? What is consciousness, emergence and these things? I have discussed a bit about those ideas. So after I published the book, I got a lot of questions, like in my Instagram and in my LinkedIn. People were asking that your book was very good, okay, I got something, but I want to delve deeper into the question of consciousness. So can you suggest me some books? Like some serious books. So many people, 2 to 3 people or maybe even more, asked me this question. So they were interested to study about consciousness, about the mystery of consciousness from a scientific perspective. Consciousness means not spiritualism, not afterlife, not from a religious or spiritual or metaphysical perspective. From a scientific perspective, they want to study consciousness. So they asked me that could I suggest them some books other than my book, obviously, because in my book there is only a very basic introduction. That book is mainly about physics and not consciousness. So I have done a bit of research about this book. So I think that if you really want to study consciousness from a scientific perspective, I think the best book will be this book. So I want to recommend this book in this video, Shadows of the Mind by Roger Penrose. Now I must warn you that this is a bit technical at parts. It's not entirely it will not be a very easy reading, and it's quite a long book also. You can see it's over 400 pages. But if you really want to study consciousness from a scientific perspective, from a physics perspective, from a quantum physics perspective, like computation, consciousness, intelligence, artificial intelligence and everything, this is a very, very very brief, not brief, very like detailed and very highly useful, great summary of the entire topic. So Roger Penrose, obviously he's a great mathematician and physicist, so I have not yet finished this book, but I have read most of it, and it inspired me so much that I thought of doing a YouTube video about this book, and this book was very helpful in my research actually. So if you are trying to understand the present situation, what does today's science say about consciousness? Like not spiritualism and not those things. If you're trying to, scientific book about it, I would say this is the best book. Maybe there are better books. I have not read a hell lot of books on the subject, but as far as I can say, this is the best book. So for those of you who are asking that you want to study consciousness from a scientific perspective, I would definitely ask you to go for this book. Shadows of the Mind, A Search for the Missing Science of Consciousness. That's the subtitle, you can see. A Search for the Missing Science of Consciousness by Roger Penrose. Vintage books. So I will be doing I did some videos about Schrodinger's What is Life and Mind and Matter. I will be doing a couple of videos about this book, like what the author is saying in this book. But for that you need to give me some time, because I am a bit busy with examinations and this and that at the present moment. So give me 1 to 2 months and I will be back. So for now, I would like to recommend this book to you, and I would urge you to think about the big questions. Maybe I myself have just said that metaphysics is most likely useless, but yeah, maybe we can find something really interesting. We can find something really, some deep connection and these things, and it gives us pleasure, definitely. So that was all for today's video. I hope you liked the video, and thank you very much.